This is multiplication facts, 9's, 10's, 11's, and 12's, lesson 32 for Saxon 4. So when we're looking at our multiplication facts, we're just looking at patterns that we can recognize when looking at your different multiplications. Today we're looking at 9's, 10's, 11's, and 12's. So I'm actually going to bring out the textbook for this because the textbook has a bunch of different ways to show you. So we're going to go through them, but I am going to mention something about the 10's before we do that. So a lot of people say that when you times something by 10, you are adding a 0. That's not actually the case. What you're doing is you're taking that number, and there's a decimal here that we never talk about unless we're using decimal numbers, and we never usually write it because we're lazy. But it's always there, right after the ones column. What you're actually doing when you times by 10 is you're moving that decimal place over 1. What that does is leaves this blank space that nothing is in, and we fill that blank space with a 0 because 0 is a placeholder. It's saying nothing is there right now, but it could be. So when you're timesing by 10, you're actually just moving that decimal place over 1. So if I was timesing 3 by 10, I would be moving that decimal place over 1, putting in a 0 to fill the spot, and ending up with 30. If I'm timesing 12 by 10, I am just moving that decimal place over a spot, putting a 0 in to fill the place, and ending up with 120. Just remember that when we times by 10s, we're not actually just adding a 0. We are actually moving the decimal place over 1 and then having to add a 0 because we now have an empty space that needs to be filled. All right, let's look at our textbook. So if you want to get out your own textbook at this point and follow along, that'd be a really good idea. Okay, so we have, let's look at the 9's first. Okay, so some of the 9's multiplication facts are listed below. We're going to look for the patterns. And notice that the first digit of each product, remember the product's the answer, the first digit is 1 less than the number that you're multiplying by, okay? So we have 9 multiplying by 2, so 1 less than 2 is 1. So the first digit is 1, okay? The second digit product is less than number multiplied by 9. You also need to notice that the 2 digits of each product add up to 9. So 1 plus 8 is 9. Okay, and if you notice again, you can also notice that the ones column keeps going down. So we go 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, so there's a lot of different patterns you can look for here. Again, if you're timesing 9 by 4, you can know that, well, the first digit is going to be 1 less than 4, which is 3. And then what do I add to 3 to make 9? I add 6 to make 9. So my answer is 36. Okay, let's do one just on the board really quick. You can say, okay, let's say I'm doing 9 times 8. Okay, I'm looking for my product. Well, the first digit is going to be 2 digits. The first digit is going to be 1 less than 8. So that's 7. And then what do I add to 7 to make 9? Well, 7, 8, 9. I add 2 to make 9, which gives me a product of 72. Let's check. 7 times 8 is 72. So that pattern works for us. Now you can do this all the way up to 9 times 10 before it starts changing a little bit. Let's look at some other ones. We have, these are the 10's ones, okay? We already went over these. You're just taking the number and you're moving the decimal place over 1, putting a 0 into that empty space, and making a number with a 0 on the end of it. So 12 goes to 120, 11 to 110, 10 to 100, 9 to 90, 8 to 80, so on and so forth. Okay, this one is looking at 11. Okay, if you notice for 11, what's happening is you are, until you get up into like the 10's and 11's and 12's, you are just putting 2 of the digit you have. right, so we have 1 times 11 is 2 1s. 2 times 11 is 2 2s, 3 3s, 4 4s, 2 5, or 2 4s, 2 5s, 2 6s, 2 7s, 2 8s, 2 9s. Then the 10s, we already know that one because 10 times anything is you just add the 0. 11 times 11, okay, we start changing. That middle one becomes a 2. And 11 times 12, that middle one becomes a 3. Okay, so these 3 are a little bit different, but the rest of them are pretty straightforward. Any number you times by 11, you just have 2 of them. So times by 6, you get 2 6s, times by 7, you get 2 7s, and there's your answer. Okay, looking at 12. Okay, if 1 is 12, 2 is 24, 3 is 36, we can start seeing that at least for these ones, we have the 10s column is the same as the number you're timesing it by. You also have the ones place going up by 2s, 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, 12 by 5. So if we times 12 by 5, okay, we'd be doing 5 times 2 is 10, which is a 0, carry the 1. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6, and that's 60. And again, that still works because our digits were, remember, 12, 24, 36, 48, and now 60, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Okay, so our pattern should go back. It should now be 72, 2, 4, 6, okay, on and on and on and on. That is 9's, 10's, 11's, and 12's. Again, if you want a little bit of a review on this, really, your book has a lot of answers and it shows you a lot of them, okay? Also, remember that for this particular lesson, I normally don't mind if you use a multiplication chart. For this particular lesson, because they are asking you to be looking at multiplication patterns, I do not want you to use a multiplications chart for your lesson practice, please. Only for lesson practice. For lesson practice, I would like you to do it without a multiplication chart. You can use a multiplication chart again for written practice, but for lesson, no multiplication practice. Or no multiplication chart. It's multiplication facts, 9's, 10's, 11's, and 12's for Saxon 4.